to thank both Pat and Kathy for being here and for introducing me. And I also want to thank Randy for letting us be here at his facility. It is very well run and well respected all across the state. I want to recognize a couple of my other colleagues from the other side of the legislature, but we've got with us Representative Nancy Lesk and Representative Jerry Stockstill. And trying to hide out, but unsuccessfully, is Representative Pam Curtis, way back there. So thank you all for coming today. Support of colleagues is incredibly important. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention my old buddy, Kelly Kultula, who served in the Senate with me, and along with Senator Janice Lee from Hayes, we formed a very dynamic trio on the Ways and Means Committee and did some really good work. It was 3 to 10, but we were often the victors. So I just took more smarts. Anyway, so I just want to welcome all of you today and thank you for joining us at this important time in this very important place. I know how important the Wyandotte Center and RSI is to your community and actually to the state as a whole. As I said last week, community mental health programs like this one are on the front lines addressing mental health challenges in our communities, and the folks who do this are my heroes and our heroes. Mental health, as Kathy said, is a very important issue to me and has been my entire career. As Representative Wolfmore mentioned, I went to work with troubled kids actually right out of high school and then continued through all of college and beyond. It's been my lifelong mission to make a difference for our kids. It would not be a stretch to say, though, that in addition to our mental health services that used to be a model for the nation, it was really our schools that attracted me to Kansas. I grew up in a military family, and we moved all over the world. And so when my husband Ted and I were thinking about where we wanted to create a permanent home, Kansas was really an obvious choice. And it was an obvious choice because of the great public schools. And both of my daughters, now grown and out of the house, thankfully, are successful because of the great education that they got in our schools. You know, but so much of what makes Kansas great, whether it's our school system or our mental health system, has been under attack these last 8 years. The cuts to our schools and other important programs like community mental health have done harm to so many. And it was all just to pay for tax cuts for those who needed them the very least. It's wrong, and I'm running for governor to fix this. To rebuild our state and make sure that all Kansas kids, no matter where they live, had the same opportunities to succeed that my daughters did. My mission has always been to do right by our kids. And today I'm proud to announce my partner in this mission to rebuild our state, my running mate, Lynn Rogers. Lynn has been fighting for our schools for decades. He has served on the Wichita Board of Education for 16 and a half years, beginning in 2001. He ran for the state senate in 2016 because he knew our schools and our communities deserved better than what they were getting. And that's something that he and I have in common. During his time in the legislature, Lynn fought to reverse the Brownback-Collier tax experiment so we can once more invest in our schools and our communities. And though he's lived in Wichita for the past 30 years, he spent his career traveling all around the state, assisting farmers and ranchers with financial planning and investment. In fact, he's done business in almost all 105 of our counties. He knows every corner of this state. And as a businessman and a parent, he knows that every single Kansas child deserves a world-class education no matter where they grow up. His commitment to our teachers and our students make him the right choice to help lead Kansas into its next chapter. Lynn will be a lieutenant governor who serves every family, every business, every community, making our state better. I'm thrilled to have him join me. And Lynn, if you want to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Laura. I really am excited and honored to be joining this mission to rebuild Kansas. I grew up on a small family farm in rural Nebraska, and when my wife and I moved to Wichita in 1985, we really found our home. Just like Laura and Ted, we discovered that our children would have all kinds of opportunities because of the great Kansas schools. And it was in those first few years when my kids were little that we really, and we got involved in the school's parent-teacher organization, that we really discovered how lucky we were. Kansans are committed to our schools. It's written into our Constitution. We have a moral obligation to provide the best education we can to our kids. Not just the ones in the big city, and not just those who can afford it, the parents that can afford it, but absolutely every Kansas child. Sadly, during the last 8 years, during the Sam Brownback and Jeff Collier years, they put our schools and our kids' future at risk. Their first legislative session, they made the largest cut to schools in state history, setting us up for the school crisis that we're currently dealing with today. The very next session, they passed the Brownback tax experiment, causing a self-inflicted budget crisis that devastated our economy, hurt every sector of our state, from schools to community health to our economy. Serving on the Wichita board during that time, I really got to see the damage firsthand. We saw fewer social workers and psychologists, a shorter school year, teacher pay freezes, higher fees for parents, not to mention more out-of-pocket expense for teachers for classroom supplies. Things had to change, or an entire generation of kids would grow up in underfunded classrooms, really with fewer opportunities to succeed. As Laura mentioned, I'm a businessman. I've traveled all over the state and have worked with farmers and ranchers, helping them with their investment in their future. I've helped families in every Kansas county plan and buy the equipment that they would need to plan or expand their family farm. And it's the same with our kids. We must plan and invest in their future, and local schools are the way to do that. They help our community and our economy. No matter whether it's a small town or a large city, the role that schools play is very significant in our communities and in our counties. When our state makes these investments, not just families with kids benefit, but everyone benefits. Business leaders get that. They know that what we spend, what we invest today will be for our workforce tomorrow. Laura and I get that too. During my time on the Wichita Board of Education, I worked hard to improve the schools in Wichita. And in my time in the state Senate, I fought alongside Laura Kelly to strengthen all Kansas schools. And I look forward to working with Laura as we rebuild our state and reinvest in the future. After years of crisis and turmoil, it's time for us to elect a governor who shares and will be a champion for our values, especially community health and our public schools. Laura Kelly is the right choice for Kansas. She has dedicated her life to making a difference for kids, whether it's through improving public schools or expanding early childhood programs or investing in community mental health facilities like this. Laura puts kids and families first. She is the only candidate that has served in the trenches fighting for Kansas families during these last 8 devastating years. When Sam Brownback and Jeff Collier hurt our schools and other important programs, Laura was there to sound the alarm and to demand accountability. She is known as a no-nonsense problem solver who will work with anyone to get things done for Kansas families. Something I've witnessed firsthand when I came to Topeka last year. Laura can bring people together like no one else. And that's something in this moment in time of recovery for Kansas we need badly. So I'm honored to be joining Laura. I believe she will be the education governor our children, our families, and our businesses deserve. So thank you very much for including me, and I look forward to our campaign. So thank you.
If we have any questions, we are glad to take them now. Okay, we can deal with this. But I do want, because of where we are right now, I do want folks in here, we are focusing on education. It's important, absolutely, probably the most important thing state government does is to adequately and equitably fund our schools. But I can reassure those of you in this room who are concerned about issues like Medicaid expansion and mental health reform, that will be right there on the radar also. We understand the need. We want to take us back to days when Kansas was a model for other states and create that same sort of system and even better. So we'll be working alongside many of you in this room as we move forward in that area. And we will expand Medicaid.
Governor Collier was architect of CanCare and there were some problems. Would you address those?
I would. Well, one, I have been addressing them. I've served on the CanCare Oversight Committee for, it seems like forever. My plan with the CanCare program is to, as we move forward, and it will take some time to do this, I'd like to see us bring it back under a quasi-governmental element, much like the Kansas Health Policy Authority that used to be in existence in the state of Kansas. We need to take the profit motive out of our health care. We have a number of contracts that are going to go forward. It's not something that can be done overnight, but I've been actually working with advocates in the waiver world and others in order to figure out what we need to do to phase in that sort of program. So a nonprofit, quasi-governmental managed care program that will integrate both behavioral and physical health.
Do you have a position on immigration issues in Kansas?
I do have a position on immigration issues in Kansas. One, I will use the governor's office to put a lot of pressure on Congress to finally come up with a comprehensive immigration reform. We have needed that for decades, and it's got to be done. My plan as governor, though, is to invite people into this state. We have done a lot of things to take away the rights of immigrants, but also many others. We will be an equal opportunity employer, and we will bully pulpit that also so that we get the message out that Kansas is open for all, that equal rights will be there, whether they're women's rights, LGBTQ rights, or immigrant rights.
And I'd like to add, immigration is a huge issue for our agricultural community in this state, and we forget that. And when you look at what's happened in other states where they've limited that, it's been devastating to their economy. And I think many of our folks that are anti-immigrant don't understand that, don't realize what that does. And you look at communities, particularly Kansas City, Kansas, it's a great, vibrant community because of the immigration population. We have that in other parts of the state as well. We want to encourage that.
So one thing I neglected to mention, so this would be a question, you were recently awarded the Distinguished Service Award for service to children by the Children's Service League. So can you speak to early childhood a minute?
Thank you, Ken. It's near and dear to my heart. Yes, actually, back in my very early Senate career, Governor Sebelius proposed setting up the Children's Cabinet and then the Early Childhood Development Block Grants. And I was the one who was able to sort of get that into the budget, not under the dark of night, but it was sort of last minute. But I was able to secure the funding that actually created those early childhood development grants. My plan as governor is to, I want to replicate some programs that I know in the state of Kansas are, again, model programs that work. And so there's one in Wichita called TOPS, the Opportunity Project that a businessman down there, Barry Downing, started. It is a public-private partnership that really gets families prenatally and carries them through with wraparound services right up until the child reaches the age of 5 and goes into our public school system in kindergarten. It's evidence-based. They've done lots of evaluation. We know that it works. Keeps kids out of special education, keeps kids out of incarceration. So I want to take those kinds of programs and with private sector and public sector work together to replicate those kinds of programs and significantly expand early childhood opportunities. I'm a big believer in prevention. I actually started my career just out of college working at a minimum security facility for boys in Illinois. I recognized immediately by the time we got to them, it was too late. And I found the same thing when I was working with teens with mental health issues. If only we could have gotten to them and to their families back when they were infants and toddlers, it would have been a totally different story. So I believe in it, and I will focus on that significantly.
And we saw great examples with TOPS. Wichita School Board had 2 schools that they funneled kids from TOPS into Wichita Public Schools, and the difference of early childhood was just amazing in the kindergarten classroom once they got there. So.
Well, again, thank you all. Appreciate you being here, taking the time. You're making this tour really exciting. Thank you.